Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the R&D Podcast. I am your host, Rachel.
Daya.
In this episode, we're going to be asking the question, can you change him? Can a woman change a man?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's it. That's the end of the podcast. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for listening and watching.
We're done. I definitely think that there are certain things that if a man's willing to change them, he will. I think that I always have this analogy that I say, or this statement, I suppose, that I say that if you have to ask someone something, or if you have to ask someone 3 times to do something, and they don't do it, or they do it one time and then they don't do it, and it's like it's a continuous thing where you have to keep on asking them to change it. It's because it's not in them, and they're probably not going to change. And that goes for anything, anything that you ask them to do, whether that's him having wandering eyes, whether that's him picking up his shoes, whatever it is. If he doesn't change it, it's because it's not in him, and he doesn't want to change it.
I think that, when you are married to somebody, you should really strive to be live by example, not necessarily lead, but just live by example. If there's certain things that you prefer, maybe you don't want a lot of cussing in the home because you have little children, but you can't expect that of him if you're over there like this mother effer da 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 da, or you listen to rap music and every third word is
like
cussing.
A pirate, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it's like, let's not be like hypocrites, right? And so let's walk and talk in the direction that we're hoping that they go as well,
right?
And so I really struggle with this one because I have seen a lot of situations where they're like, he tends to do this thing all the time, but with me, if he gets with me, I bet you I can get him to do this other thing. And then they're just completely disappointed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to even for instance, I know we talked about this on a few episodes back. If he says, I never want to have children, or I don't want more children, then you think that you're going to change his mind, and that you're going to be the powerful source in vagina, or whatever you want to call it. That all of a sudden he's going to want to have that with you. And I think that if people are very, very about what they believe, you're not going to change their beliefs unless they want to change it for you, because you're that special person. And I think that you have to gauge things, right? And even wandering eye, if he has a wandering eye, he's going to have a wandering eye unless he wants to fix that. There are so many things to this, and I think that you have to come from a place of, I either accept this or I reject it. Am I okay with this? Can I live with this? Is this going to be an issue? Because I think that oftentimes we should just live in the moment, not project a future that hasn't arrived. However, if you start to see that this is going to become an issue, you're just going to fall deeper in love, or you're going to start to feel more feelings for this person a year down the line. And then that could be ultimately your deal breaker. And I can tell you, for me, because I've been out in the dating world for quite some time, or I've dated in the past or what have you, I can tell that's going to be a deal breaker. I'll give you an example. If the person's ever had children, I know I don't want any more children. So it's I know that eventually I could feel the pressure, or I could feel that he lacked this thing that I don't want to give anybody. That I just feel what, I think it's only fair that he has the right to keep it moving, and I think a lot of the time we think, no, I'll change her mind, or no, I'm going to change his mind, and I think that I have the ability to do that. But if someone's telling you, I don't want this and I don't want that, believe me, if that's what they are believing, more than likely they're going to stick to their guns, and they're not going to change that.
Yeah, I think that when some of you guys watching this are married, right? And many of you guys might be divorced. I think, and some of you may have never been married and you're trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
I can tell you that what you see in the dating portion of it, right? I had a really great therapist. Right after my marriage. I sat with him 6 times, for my little free sessions, and it was really great, actually. And he said no one can fake anything for more than 2 years. And I think that what you see on that journey of getting to know someone in those first 2 years, you gotta believe them. Maya Angelou told Oprah, when people show you who they really are, believe them the first time. And so often you see things about somebody, and then you start to kind of create these little agitation conversations because you're trying to adjust them and you're trying to change them instead of accepting them. I will say, you teach people how to treat you and things like that, and there could be some really good signs though. There could be he says or operates in a certain way. Maybe he licks his fingers during dinner. I'm going to use something very menial, okay?
That is not menial.
Okay.
We had a whole ass podcast on people and spitting out
etiquette. So
like,
maybe he's
deal
sitting,
breaker like a mother.
Maybe he's sitting at dinner, and instead of grabbing the napkin that's right there nicely folded, he's like, okay.
And then he does this whole
okay.
thing.
Okay, maybe he's
No.
maybe he's doing something like that, and then you are like, babe, use the napkin, okay? Like, not criticizing him, but like, here's the napkin, and then you do that a few times, and then eventually you see that he's about to do it, and then he grabs the napkin. What's beautiful about that is that you see that he's willing to make adjustments to improve. See, someone has to want to improve and adjust. Right? They have to want to do it. You can't force them to do it, right? Like Delia was saying. But I will tell you, if you have the patience, I think, and if they have a desire to mold themselves more to your liking, I can see that could happen very organically or whatever. But if you think you're going to get a guy who has been operating in this way the entire time, this other certain way, let's use an example. Do we want to say like religion? Or do we want to say like the guy just doesn't believe in God, he's not going to go to church, he doesn't want to listen to gospel music, like he's just not about it, and then you're a low-key Christian and you're like, you know what, I bet that like once we're married or whatever, like I'll be able to like change him. And then you get married and then you're like, but hey babe, we should go to Bible study, and he's like, what?
On Sunday to church.
And then now like, you're fighting because you're like, but don't you want to make me happy? Don't you want to do more of what I want to do?
It's like, that's not my thing.
From day one you've known
that's not his thing.
It's not his thing.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot, and I think that's why it's important that I know we make references on certain books, and then if you're not married and you're looking to be married and you think you're going to change someone, there's that book that's 101 questions to ask before you get married. I think that's important just so you could see where you're at in political views, life views, living views, whatever it is that your dreams, goals, and aspirations are. You have to see if you can align with them. And, at the end of the day, I know that we're living in modern times, and modern times now are, I open TikTok, I open Instagram, and it's like, oh, you want him to be attracted to you? You want him to do what you want him to do? Let me tell you, you got to chant this, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. And, at the end of the day, it's like, do not try to change people and then do these little chants. I think it's kind of creepy in my opinion, because it's like, be careful what you wish for. I think oftentimes it's like we project a future with this person. We're like, it would be magical, it would be perfect, and oh my God, I can't imagine my life without him. And you're doing all these little chants, and all of a sudden the freaking guy becomes like extremely obsessed with you, and you're like a stalker status, and you're like, I prayed for that, actually. I chanted that. And so I think that when people show you who they are, believe them. You either accept it or you reject it. And it's very simple. Is it going to be a deal breaker for you? You got to take those things into consideration. I will say that I shared this on last season's episodes, that I went to dinner on a date with someone, and he was literally biting his nail and spitting them out
in the restaurant.
Spitting them out on the restaurant. And I was like, and I didn't know him like that. I said, stop spitting out your nails. That's gross. And so I think it was at that moment that I said, you know what? I know that maybe I don't have the most proper etiquette. I always say this, if I'm in the privacy of my own home, I like to eat with my hands, because, being Mexican, you eat, the tortillas with your hands and that kind of thing. But I know that if I'm at a restaurant, I'm not going to be spitting out my nails or not knowing how to handle the silverware. So I definitely think that if you think that could be a deal breaker, then you need to like nip it in the butt, and just say, you know what, this isn't going to work, because I think it's a big deal.
How much of it is it gonna feel for you as a woman that you're like raising him? Because I think that it's easy in this day and age, because good men seem to be hard to come by, right?
Right.
Men would argue that good women are hard to come by, but I will say that, let's just say you get one and you really like him. You're like, this is a good guy, but oh my God, he doesn't have ambition. So now I gotta sign him up for courses. I'm gonna take him to conferences. I'm gonna have him listen to podcasts, and then all of a sudden, okay, like Delia's saying, oh, I want to go to fancy restaurants, but he has no etiquette. So now you're teaching him how to have etiquette. I mean, you could see him like a ball of clay that you're molding and shaping into your perfect guy. But the reality is that worth the effort, or is it better for you to say, you know what, I might have to be lonely for a minute in order to really just hold my standards and go, I want to find someone who naturally aligns with me.
Right.
Another thing is fitness, okay? So, for example, you get with someone and they're really into fitness, but then all of a sudden you're like, why do you got to get up every morning at 4:45 in the morning? Like, why aren't you just laying in bed with me? Or you know, whatever. And so then you are starting to complain because now you feel like a weird competition with the time he spends at the gym versus with you. I've heard this, by the way, from people.
For sure.
But also, if you're a man, 15 of you watching, and you marry a girl or you're dating a girl and she isn't really into fitness, but somehow you're like, come on, let's go to the gym together, come on, like you're having to like coax her to go into the gym, and then you think when you get married she's just going to live this like gym life with you. It didn't come naturally to her. She's probably doing it and stepping up because it pleases you in the moment, but that's not sustainable. People eventually get tired of your ish and they're like, I'm just not going to do that. So I think that you need to really look at your spouse. You need to look at your, the people that you're potentially going to date and say, these are the things that I love to do. I love to hike, surf, ski, read, meditate, pray, whatever those things naturally are. And then you got to ask yourself, how many of these activities or things do I need someone to align with me on? Because you're not going to find somebody that aligns with everything.
No, absolutely.
But if you go, you know what, I love someone who loves to surf. I love the ocean. I love to have a partner out there paddling out with me.
But if so it's kind of funny, right? But then you want someone that can paddle out with you, but what if, that you meet this perfect girl, but she don't even know how to swim? So, and if those are your loves and passions, you have to see how that... I think for guys,
it's different, though. We're speaking to women, right? So with women, we do want guys that align a little bit more. So I think guys don't care. I think guys genuinely, they don't really have those checklists like we do, with women, Yeah,
I think some guys could have it though. I mean, they can have their checklists of things that they want in a woman, the qualities in a woman, but I definitely think that, women have a tendency to be a little bit more maybe more choosy sometimes.
Yes.
And so I can see your point, but I do think that for both people, I mean, you want to make sure that if you're not a person that is that sentimental or whatever, you don't want someone that's just going to cry out, start crying over dinner for everything where you're with a crybaby, because I think that there's a fine line between, being emotional and then just being an emotional wreck all the time. And so I think it's like a fine balance of okay, this kind of aligns with me, or that you're not feeling like you're raising someone, whether that's a woman or a man, by the way. Because I think oftentimes, we want to step up and say, hey, you know what, maybe try it this way, maybe do this, maybe do that. And it gets to you come to a place where you're like, okay, so am I being kind of naggy, kind of pushy? Am I trying to act like his mom
now?
And so it's like, I never want to be looked at, I'm not your mother, I'm your partner. And I think that you don't want to come from a place of being someone's freaking mother, because that's not sexy.
I think that the trap is, and we've talked about this since season 1, the trap is looking at people for their potential instead of accepting them as is and asking yourself, as is, if he got on one knee today, as is, am I saying yes, knowing that he might be like this forever? That's really the gauge, right? But too often we go, oh, you know what? Right now, he's not where he's hoping to be, but, he's doing some things, he has potential, because when you really like someone and you fall for someone, you see the most amazing things in them. You see potential in your children that they don't see in themselves. I've had people in my career see potential in me way before I ever saw it in myself, So it's human nature to see that about other people, right? But sometimes when you crush on somebody or whatever, you see so much potential in them, but they might just be like, dude, I'm tired. I'm cool with where I'm at. I'm cool with what I have. And by the way,
do nothing more.
By the way, somebody else might see it and think the world of me as is. So you have to really be honest and go, as is, right now, out the box, the way this dude is this a fit for me? Is this a fit for where I'm going? And I think that we're so afraid of making those types of assessments and decisions because we also don't want to be B-words about it, and stuff like that. And it's so hard to find someone that's really great. And her and I, we talk about this all the time.
But I definitely think that, I always say this, whoever you do choose to be with, I don't care who it is, they could be the biggest make or the biggest break in your life. And that is it spiritually, emotionally, financially. If they feel that they can, we had an episode called, cheering or nag, where you're cheering someone on or you're being a nag. And so I do feel that, the person that you choose can either uplift you or bring you down. And so you have to be and that's guys or girls. girls, by the way. And so you have to really think about who you're giving your time to, and understanding that if you guys don't align and you don't feel that you could uplift him and he can't uplift you, then maybe you guys should really think about what you guys are doing together.
And let's share with them what that actually looks like, because we have encountered people. We were talking today off camera about someone that was on my team, and he was such a nice guy. I mean, such a nice guy. And I basically did a gesture. That was very corporate-y, right? But it was like a real nice strong gesture of appreciation. And it was out of the money that, for my money, it wasn't like out of like, oh, I could have paid them, but instead I did this. And everybody loved it. Literally everybody's like, this is a game changer. Like, oh, I can't wait to go with my husband or my wife or whatever. But this individual thought that that's pissed. What was going to be the reaction. He was so happy. His wife was pissed. His wife was like, well, why wouldn't she just give us the money? Why wouldn't she just give you the money? Like, why do we need this? He was thinking, oh my gosh, she's going to love this. It's going to be romantic date nights, my wife and I, because they've been married forever. And she was a pessimist about the entire thing. Wow. And she was the only one out of like the whole group.
She was a sourpuss.
She was.
Yeah.
But I'm using that example, not to put their business out there, but I'm using the example to say this. If you are involved with the person and they see the problem in every solution you present, you're not going to change that. Yeah. If you are with someone and then you are accomplishing something really cool that most people can't, and they're like, oh, so what does that mean? Like, now you're just going to be some like famous, like whatever. Like, you know what I mean? They make these little digs. You're not going to change that.
You're not going to change that, yeah. Okay. And at the end of the day, sometimes, certain people that you choose, instead of them looking at you as their partner, they're looking at you as their competitor. Yes. And so then you have to take those things into consideration, and you're never going to change anybody. So you either have to accept them for what they are and how they come to the table and what they bring. And then there are things that you can see in people, though, by the way, because I do feel that everybody has higher potential, and sometimes people have to bring that higher potential out in you. If you pick the wrong person, they're going to knock you, and all the things that are beautiful about you, they can knock you. Because sometimes, people, when they walk into a room, they light up, right? So they have a light to them, and sometimes people that you're with do not like that, because you command the room, because you have this presence, because you're the light, you're a beacon of light as you walk in. Sometimes people aren't going to like that. So I think that it's really important that you take those things into consideration, and especially if you're dating, because if you're dating, it's really easy to be like, you know what, this is not going to work.
Red flag.
You know what, abort the mission, we're done, we're not doing this. When you're married, you have to work all those little details out. And a lot of the time, I have to say, when you're a wife and you see these things are happening, we like to play a blind eye and say, you know what, I married him though. Like, now I'm with him. Now this and excuses. For them, But sometimes also, we as women also, create hostile environments because you don't like what they're doing and they're not going to change it. So you either accept it, and the only way to reject it is divorce, unfortunately. And divorce is no fun. And so I think at the end of the day, before you get into a place of marriage, you got to look at the things like, is this going to drive me nuts? Is this going to be a deal breaker? Because let me tell you, you're not changing anybody ever unless a person wants to change.
The number one thing that I have seen over the years that I find very unfortunate is when a woman, meets a man, she's like, oh my God, he's amazing.
I love him. He's
perfect.
They
get married, and then they're like, oh my God, like I mentioned the gym earlier, okay? But I'll use surfing as an example. Yeah. Oh my God, he's going surfing again with his friends. Oh my God, like, girl, where's he at? Surfing, like. And so bothered by it, when this is something he did before he ever met her. This is something he did while they were dating. I've seen that with NFL games. I knew a couple, and he was an avid, literal, obsessive NFL Raiders fan. And he was like an executive at his company, but he loved the Raiders. And he would get a calendar, the family calendar. It was actually his Raider calendar. And what he would do is put in black or silver or whatever. So black was like, I think, the home games, and silver was like the away games. And he would hand his wife, because I knew them both, the calendar, and be like, here you go. That way you know what it's looking for this season. In other words, he was hopping flights to go watch the games. And she'd be like, can you believe that? And I remember asking, like, when did he start doing that? And then he was there, and he's like, I've always done it. Like, I've done it since forever. Like, as soon as I started, was old enough to earn a paycheck, I've been blowing my money on these games. And so to me, I'm like, okay, she probably thought that was kind of cool. Maybe even got flown out to games. But now that she's married and has
now
kids
it's
and everything, it's an issue.
Yeah, and you're not going to change that. You already knew that's what it was. I also have seen where men will marry a woman and the woman might know how to just make spaghetti, and she'll make spaghetti for him, and so he might think like she's going to be cooking a lot. She probably learned how to make spaghetti for other reasons, but anyway, so another episode.
Yeah.
And then they get married, or they start to shack up, and then she's not domestic. She don't like to cook.
And he's tired of spaghetti.
Guess what we're having? Meatballs with spaghetti with meatballs, and that's just what it is. And so I think that a lot of the time, it's kind of like what you said with your therapist. People can't fake it after 2 years, so you have to gauge that. If you start to see that there's things that you're not liking, then guess what? You either abort the mission or you continue with the mission, and then you just have to just go with the flow and not.
And when you're in a marriage, though, like, compromise is a thing.
Oh my gosh, compromise is a big thing.
Love and compromise and consideration, it is a thing. But you can't sit there if they have hobbies. They love to go fishing all the time. Some guys are really obsessive. I saw a video where a bunch of guys get together. I couldn't believe it. I was like not believing what I was seeing. And they got these little RC trucks, like little pickup trucks with little monster tires.
Oh, yeah.
They're like remote control. Okay, they go out into the woods.
Oh.
It's a whole club of them, and they go over little dirt hills.
In California, though, right?
I don't know where this is, but my TikTok algorithm took me there.
Got you.
And it was like 30 of these guys, and they're like, oh, and they're going over little branches and riverbeds, and I was really watching this. And I sent it to somebody, and they go, well, I think it's kind of cool. And I said, really? I go, would it be cool if I said, hey, girl, bring your remote control Barbie car, and let's go spin them out at the mall? Like, it was weird. But what I'm saying is those women, the wives, who married these guys, because they're older guys, I'm sure they're like rolling their eyes somewhere having brunch. The guys are out in the woods again with their RC cars. Chances are they were always into that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like, don't bash the hobbies, but there's some compromise to say, hey, do you have to do it every Sunday? Is there any chance that this Sunday we can maybe do
something different?
Maybe every other Sunday.
Yeah.
Reach some common ground.
Yeah.
With that
stuff. And I think leaving your ego at the door, that's always so important, because oftentimes we want to let them know that you're upset, and it's like, I'd be damned if I say sorry. I'd be damned, like, he's gonna learn. And so, but at the end of the day, the moral of the story is, if a person's a certain way, the likelihood of you changing them is probably very unlikely. So you either accept or reject. And if you're married, you have to have a lot of compromise there, and then you just have to accept the person that you decided to do life with.
Find the reasons to be grateful that he's in the woods with his friends playing with RC cars.
Yeah, I suppose, I don't know, it's not my gig, but I suppose so. So
See you
cheers.
next time.